I'm currently working in Sweden with a company in Sweden, and the Nordics have a very different culture than much of mainland kind of Europe. Do you think all of these things apply across cultures, Southern European, Western, Eastern European, and Nordics? Or do you think a lot of this stuff works better in Nordic cultures?
Yeah, this for me is something I'm really interested in. Having lived in many countries myself, I'm so curious about the cultural dynamic and in what ways that helps or hinders these kinds of transformations. And what I'll say is that there's some really great books out there like Geography of Thought, The Culture Map, that sort of map differences in cultures. And also, I'm reading one at the moment that I'm really enjoying called "Nurturing Our Humanity" by Brianne Eisler and Douglas Fry, I think, um, about that challenges this myth that you know the selfish gene, that human beings are kind of wired for war and selfishness, and says that actually there's so much evidence that shows that we're also wired from the time when we're babies for empathy and collaboration and kind of pro-social behaviors. So what I'm noticing as someone who I do leadership trainings with people all over the world in lots of different cultures, and I've had a lot of conversations with people in China or India or Rwanda, for example, talking about the difference that that makes. And I think what I'm coming to realize is there are different starting points for sure, right? So Nordic countries have more egalitarian families and women have higher social status. And that for sure means that their starting point is more democratic, more equitable, I think, compared to India, perhaps, where you have a much more hierarchical dynamic in families and in schools. So that might mean that you have a different starting point in terms of applying these ideas. And yet, my co author Karen is Swedish, and she finds that in Sweden, for example, this can sometimes be difficult because people perceive that, well, we Swedes are already super democratic. So we're really empowering. And yet, what we're finding, my colleagues and I, and some of my colleagues have been doing this for decades, is that universally as human beings in workplaces, doesn't matter what culture you're in, it seems to be universal that we have this parent-child kind of dynamic, this hierarchical dynamic in relationships in work. So wherever you're starting from, that is present, even in the Nordic countries. And in the Nordic countries, you might be less aware of it because you have this belief that we're democratic. But we all have that starting point. So I think as soon as we can acknowledge that and acknowledge all of the ways in which I become kind of parental or top down without realizing it, from that place, then we can start to become more aware, act more from choice, and start to create together more of an adult to adult sort of climate and dynamic of working together. So it seems like whatever the culture, that's for whatever reason is universal to human beings, it seems. That's my kind of working theory. And so we all start from different places on the journey, but we're all kind of, I think this path to more adult to adult ways of working together is new for us as a species in many ways, even though it's going back to a lot of ancient principles.